There we go. Hello, everyone. We were having some technical difficulties. I don't know why we have this need to redo interfaces every 6 months, but every time I had a nice rhythm. I knew how to do everything, and I go on there, and the whole thing's changed. It doesn't tell me how to start the video, and I finally found out a way to make it go back to the way it was before. And so, if anybody knows more about technical stuff than I do, you are welcome to show me how to do it. Anyway, we are on Psalm 35. I'm going to try and get to Psalm 39 tonight. Actually, we've got to make sure we get to Psalm 39 tonight because I'm going to do something tricky to you guys. And then we'll go from there. Oh, my hair's all messed up. Hello. It's okay. I've been running around all day. With that, let's start with a prayer, and we'll offer our study on the Psalms from 35 to 39. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, shine within our hearts, loving Master, the pure light of divine knowledge, and open the eyes of our understanding to the understanding of the message of your gospel teachings. Instill within us also the reverence for your blessed commandments, having trampled upon carnal desires. We may enter into a spiritual way of living, but thinking and doing only those things that are well pleasing to you. For you, Christ our God, our sanctification of the nation. To you we give glory to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and forever in the age of ages. Amen. 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 We will jump right in. So we've got trying to get through 4 Psalms today, 35, 36, 37, 38, through 9. I guess that's 5 Psalms, right? You have to count inclusively. But so we're trying to get through those. And actually, when I started preparing, I was like, oh, this isn't going to take very long. These aren't, these Psalms are pretty straightforward. And they are pretty straightforward. But it's very interesting to see what they do when you kind of start putting them all together. So they'll give us some really good insight to our relationship to God, but then also, these are very there's one of these is one of the penitential Psalms, 38, that we'll get to, is one of the 7 penitential Psalms. So it'll be the third one we've gotten to now. It was Psalm 6, and then Psalm 32, and then Psalm 38. Will be the third of the 7 penitential Psalms. But some of the others, they're very, they're supplicatory Psalms. They're asking God. But they all kind of deal with the same theme of, well, if all these rotten people are rich and comfortable and happy and have all these good things, why am I being good again? Like, what's in this for me? So it addresses jealousy in the jealousy of the wicked, which is kind of interesting because you're not just there. And I felt this way all the time. I remember growing up, and I would not say I was a good Christian, but I was a very self-righteous Christian, so I didn't do the bad stuff. I didn't go drinking. I didn't go smoking. I didn't go doing drugs. I didn't chase after girls. I didn't do any of that stuff. And I get to college, and all these people have these, awakenings, these spiritual awakenings. And then I'm kind of going, wait a second. You were running around doing all that stuff, and then you get to be a nice little good. It's like, that's not fair. It's like, I should have something. I should get something out of it. And that attitude, and I'm not saying it's a good attitude. I'm actually kind of ashamed of it, but it's interesting to me because it says something about the disposition of our heart, as if those things are worthwhile and something that we should be pursuing. But there is this sense that, I'm going to have to define this word carefully so you guys don't, but this idea of sensual reward, not sexual reward, but sensual reward, that we should have something material that feels good or tastes good or smells good. Like that's how God should reward us. Now, here's what's interesting is that's not too far from the truth, because when you read the Psalms, and remember I told you about Hebrews, a very concrete faith. So when it talks about God blessing them, we'll get to this, especially in, I think it's Psalm 30. I thought it was 36. Oh, it is 36. How precious is your steadfast love, O God. The children of men take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house. You give them drink from the river of your delights. For you, there's a fountain of life in your life. Okay, wow, that's pretty embodied stuff. You get, food and drink. So these Psalms kind of taken together really help us to understand how to deal with that. And what I really like, too, is the commentaries, at least 2 of them, made a big point of putting these Psalms in conversation with Job. So Job is a really important book in the Bible, because without the book of Job, you might get this, you might have the prosperity gospel. You have what people preach now. It's like, God loves you, so everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. You're never going to have to worry again. If you want that Mercedes, name it and claim it. And, all these kind of distortions of the gospel that we have running around right now. Imagine if you couldn't be like, Job, right? And so Job's whole argument with God is, you said the righteous will prosper, and I'm righteous and blameless. You said the wicked will be punished, but these wicked aren't being punished. So what's up with that?
Yeah.
Right. And the answer comes back from God. You don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? But and I've been thinking as we go through the Psalms, I might want to do a Bible study on Job at some time. It's a tough book. It's a long book too. But 36, 35 chapters, 36 chapters. But there it is, 36, 38, 39. 42. It's 42. And it actually is right before the Psalms. But we'll jump into that question. But this is the thing I like about the Psalms is that, and you're going to see this especially with Psalm 39. That's why I'm going to end on Psalm 39, is one of the commentators said they're permission granting Psalms. We feel so guilty about the way we feel, either towards each other or to God. We're like, oh, I don't want to be disrespectful to God. But sometimes we're just kind of annoyed with God. We're irritated at him. And it's like, wait a second, you said this, but this is the way my life is going. I'm not sure how you're going to put those two things together. And we get the Psalm and you see it and you're like, oh, so I'm not some, impious, slanderer. I'm actually, this is a normal experience. And so the Psalms, as we talked about at the beginning, they give us an expression for things that we feel that sometimes we think maybe we shouldn't feel, but they give us an authenticity of our experience. Now, it's important to listen to the answer they give you back, but still, they let you get upset. So Psalm 35 is a little bit, it's not I don't think it's considered an imprecatory psalm, but it is one of the psalms. It's like, God, beat up the guys that annoy me. Right? You're kind of like, okay, wait, what do you do with that? Well, we feel that way. But watch what happens with this psalm, and I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, fairly quickly, but it's really interesting. So a Psalm of David, it's a supplication, like I said. And now it starts off with martial language, take hold of your shield and buckler, draw the spear and javelin and all this other stuff, but it shifts into kind of a legal language. And there's actually a number of different metaphors that float in here, but it seems to be that this psalm, at least the context of the psalm, is somebody who's been falsely accused in court. And they're seeking justice. And how do we go about doing that? Now, what's also really interesting is the ancient commentators would put this in from David at 1 Samuel chapter 24, which is where Saul's trying to kill David, and David comes out of his cave after he just cut a little strip of cloth off Saul, and he says, "Hey, look, I didn't kill you. I could have killed you, but I didn't. So let God judge between you and me, who is righteous in his sight." So you have this accuser, Saul, and David, of course, feels it's a false accusation, and then God being judge over them. So that kind of context places it in there too. And you'll see that in the psalm. Anyway, I will read Robert Alter's translation. So this translation will be a little bit different than what you guys probably have in your Bibles, but I just love the poetry, so I'm going to indulge myself. So Psalm 30, I'm all the way up at 40 where I was. There you go. I just had a handful of nuts, so I've got on my teeth. I need to remind myself, don't eat nuts right before Bible study. So Psalm 35, for David. Take my part, Lord, against my contesters. Fight those who fight against me. Steady the shield and the buckler and rise up to my help. Unsheath the spear to the haft against my pursuers. Let them be shamed and disgraced who seek my life. Let them retreat, be abased who plot harm against me. So you already see that. That's the real martial language right there. But this idea of God fighting on your behalf. So that becomes important because what ends up happening is, I'm going to blow the ending. I'm sorry. But what ends up happening is we keep wanting to take vengeance in our own hands. We want to seek justice. We want to accomplish justice. But the Psalms keep coming back to this. You can't be just. You're too beset by sin. You need to rely on God, and you need to trust that God's justice will prevail. So already saying, God, you take care of this because I can't handle it myself. Let them be like chaff before the wind with the Lord's messenger driving. May their way be darkness and slippery paths with the Lord's messenger chasing them. So that 5 and 6, that's a really excellent poetic use of the parallelism, because it always intensifies it. It makes it a little bit more intense. So let them be like chaff before the wind. So you think about, you throw the wheat and the chaff up, and the chaff is the really dried up husks that the wind comes along and just blows it. So you see them kind of scattering through the wind. But then the Lord's messenger, and messenger, of course, is the word for angel. So the Lord's angel's driving it, so not just be like blown by the wind, but with an angel chasing you, you'll be scattered. May their way be darkness and slippery paths. So like think about going somewhere in the middle of the night that's dark, you're not familiar with it. Maybe you're even hiking and there's kind of some slippery rocks and everything. And trying to navigate that is difficult enough. With the Lord's messenger chasing them. Now, if you have an angel chasing you, you're going to be trying to haul through those woods. It's going to be that much more difficult. So the idea is, Lord, rout them, put them to panic flight, just get them away from me. For unprovoked, they set their net trap for me. Unprovoked, they dug a pit for my life. Let disaster come upon him unwitting in the net that he set and trap him. May he fall into disaster. So verse 8 is actually very striking, but not to us. But a Jew reading that even today is going to have a really hard time with it, because the word for disaster is shova, which is also what they call the Holocaust. So they're basically let a Holocaust come upon them unwitting in the net that he set and trap and may fall into a Holocaust. That's a pretty aggressive sense of vengeance. But I mean, that's reading into it. But just kind of, I thought that was really interesting because one of the comments pointed that out, and I was like, wow. You don't think about those things that would trigger, things that would, but I think it's very interesting. But they are asking God to, wipe these people out. So it's a pretty aggressive thing. But I shall exult in the Lord, shall be glad in his rescue. All my bones say, Lord, who is like you, saving the poor from one stronger than he, and the poor and the needy from his despoiler. Outrageous witnesses rose. So false witnesses rose. Of things I knew not, they asked me. They paid me back evil for good, bereavement for my very self. So he's saying, God, drive away my enemies because they're stronger than me. And that's one of the big points. I'm going to go over 3 points when we get to the end of this psalm. That the adversary is stronger than you. So you're weak in the face of the adversary. You can't overcome the adversary. That's an important note. And then he's going to actually say, I never noticed, because we read the Psalms and we just want to get through them. Yeah. And we don't think about what they're saying. But see if you catch this next part. And I, when they were ill, my garment was sackcloth. I afflicted myself with fasting. May my own prayer come back to my bosom. So what's he saying there? See if you pick up on it, because I didn't.
I think that he's righteous.
Well, he's right, but what did he do that makes him righteous?
The fasting and the...
Why was he fasting? Why was he dressed in sackcloth?
To please God, I guess.
No. And when they were ill, when they were sick, when they were suffering, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of striking.
It is.
Like, I never noticed that. He's saying, look, I want you to wipe these guys out. They drove me nuts. They're falsely accusing me. They're chasing after me. They're making me look bad. And when they were sick, I was praying for them. I was mourning. I was in fasting. I was in sackcloth. I was, before you, praying for their deliverance. Now I want that prayer for their deliverance to come back to me for my deliverance. It's really quite powerful.
Yeah.
Now I don't know. I mean, psychologically, was the guy really, was he making justifying himself or what? But that's really interesting. And I think there's a really good message in there too, is that we pray and we fast for our adversaries when they're ill. As for a friend, for a brother, I went about as though mourning a mother, in gloom I was bent. Yet when I limped, they rejoiced and they gathered against me. Like strangers, and I did not know. Their mouths gaped and they were not still. So when he was saying, as when they were ill, I prayed for them like a friend or a brother, and I went about as I was mourning for my mother. I was gloom. I was all this stuff. Yet when I'm afflicted, when I'm hurt, they rejoice and they gather against me and they mock me and they open up their mouths either to mock or to consume. It's not clear, but they were like strangers to me when I treated them like family. Which I mean, there's such an earthy reality to these Psalms, because haven't we all felt that way?
Yeah.
You know, and then we're told in church, no, you have to be forgiving and kind and generous, and you do. I don't want to like attack our virtues,
Yeah.
but you need a release for that sometimes. You know, it's like, well, I was nice to them and I shared with them and I did this, and then they came over and then they just did this and that. And then to read a psalm and be like, this guy's whining just like I whine. You know, he's like, I was nice to them and then they're being jerks to me. So you know what? I don't care if their house collapses in the storm. You know, like, and that's a feeling that we get. So he's saying, stranger, I didn't know the mouths gaped and were not still. With contemptuous mocking chatter, they gnashed their teeth against me. I mean, the translation, I really do love his translations. They impiously mocked more and more, gnashing at me with their teeth. That's pretty good. But with contemptuous mocking chatter, they gnashed their teeth against me. That's just a really beautiful turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Oh, master, how long will you see it? Like, why are you looking? You're watching this. How long will you see it? Bring back my life from their violence, from the lions, my very being. I shall acclaim you in a great assembly, in a vast crowd I shall praise you. So anytime he's talking about a great assembly or vast crowd, he's talking about some kind of liturgical worship, the psalmist. And you're talking about maybe a temple ritual or something like that. So he's saying, look, deliver me, and I'll go make a big deal of it in the temple. Let not my unprovoked enemies rejoice over me. Let my wanton foes not leer, for they do not speak peace, and against the earth's quiet ones plot words of deceit. They open their mouths wide against me. They say, hurrah, hurrah, our eyes have seen it. You, Lord, have seen. Do not be mute. I love that. Right? You have seen, don't be mute. Yeah. My master, do not keep far from me. Rouse yourself. Wake for my cause, my God, my master, for my quarrel. Judge me by your justice, Lord my God. Let not them rejoice over me. Let them not say in their heart, hurrah for ourselves. Let them not say, we devoured him. Let them be shamed and abased, one and all, who rejoice in my harm. Let them don shame and disgrace, who vaunted over me. May they sing glad and rejoice, who desire justice for me. And may they always say, great is the Lord who desires his servants' well-being. And my tongue will murmur your justice all day long, your praise. Something that's very interesting about this psalm is that it's not in the typical rhythm. This is the one, isn't it? I want to make sure I'm not messing this up. Oh, nope. It's a later one. It's Psalm 37. Anyway, maybe it's not Psalm 37. Which one is it? I will find it. Oh, maybe I won't find it. I keep studying these things and then I get to them and I don't know how to do it. Well, one of them, it's 39. It has a different structure poetically. Yeah, it's not this one. But let's go back. Let them be shamed and abased. Let them don shame and disgrace. So the ones who are against me, make them miserable. Right? We feel that way. May they sing glad and rejoice who desire justice for me. So there's people on both sides. There's good and there's bad. May they always say, great is the Lord who desires his servants' well-being. And this is an important point. This is going to get me my 3 points. And my tongue will murmur your justice all day long, your praise. So my servants' well-being. You want to take a stab and guess what the word for well-being is in Hebrew? Shalom.
Shalom. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So shalom would be the wholeness of our good, the fullest flowering of our human condition. You know, so what Aristotle in philosophy would have called happiness is what the Hebrews call, or the Israelites call shalom. So shalom isn't just the absence of conflict; it isn't just peace.
Yeah.
It's actually there's a positive context to it, a positive content, that it is the fullest flourishing of the human condition, the psychological well-being, physical well-being, everything else. It is the wholeness, the completeness to which God has called us. Now, so here's the thing. Here's the points. Number one, the adversary has taken away my shalom. So my well-being, my happiness, my equanimity, my even-keeledness has been taken away. My adversary did that because they're annoying me. right? The second thing is the adversary is strong and I'm weak, right? Really, someone who's weaker than you can't take away your shalom, right? I mean, it can annoy you, I guess, but you can retaliate. You can't retaliate if they're stronger than you. God's hesed, his covenant faithfulness, his loving kindness or steadfast love. There's all kinds of words, but remember we talked about hesed a little while ago. His hesed is concerned with my shalom. That's a really shocking thing to claim about God. God cares about my personal well-being. Therefore, I will, what's the word? I will entreat. I will entreat my master to restore my shalom. Now, why does that become important? Because that takes justice out of our hands, right? My shalom is what God is interested in a personal, intimate way, my well-being. So if someone who's stronger than me has taken away my shalom, it's not just a problem for me, it's a problem for God, because he's intimately concerned with my shalom, with my well-being, with my fullness of my humanity. So I need to trust in God to handle that. That's kind of one of the central core affirmations of the psalm. That's how we pray in the Psalms. That it's, we recognize that we don't have to. Our shalom is not something that we build. Our shalom is not something that we need to protect. Our shalom isn't something that we have to defend against other people. But God wants that for us, and God is capable against enemies that are greater than us, whether they're physical, material enemies or spiritual enemies, or ourselves in some cases. We turn to God to restore our shalom. We don't turn to ourselves. And that's going to be important as we read the rest of these other psalms. God is the one who restores shalom. God is the one whose justice will prevail in the end. Anything else unsettles us and takes away our shalom, our peace, our well-being. Got it?
Yeah.
Very good. Any questions? Go ahead and put on the screen, wherever it shows up on the screen. I don't know. I never can tell. That's to my left, I think. What's my left? I have to count. So maybe over there. Anyway, Psalm 35. So Psalm 36. Now, Psalm 36, we'll get through really quick, but it's fascinating what it does. It personifies crime or offense or transgression or iniquity. The very first line is, crime's utterance to the wicked within his heart. It's quoting crime. And crime, remember in Robert Alter's translation, he wants to defend against this idea of sin as some sort of an abstract thing, that it's like a condition, an ontological thing. For the Israelites, sin was a very concrete thing. It was harming your neighbor in some way, shape, or form. So now, crime's utterance to the wicked within his heart. There is no fear of God before my eyes. So this is the image of someone who's a habitual sinner. And what's happened, the image that we get just from this very first line is that, it's like that cartoon, the Looney Tunes, where you've got your little devil on one shoulder and a little angel on the other. This one's got no angel. It just got knocked right off. So it was just this little devil whispering in the guy's ear, being like, yeah, don't have to worry about God. Don't be afraid of God. God, he's asleep at the wheel. Do what you do. Number one, make sure you take care of yourself. Everybody else take care of themselves, right? Right? Watch out for number one. For it caressed him with its eyes to find its sin of hatred. So it's teaching him to hate in his heart. The words of his mouth are mischief, deceit. He ceased to grasp things to do good. So you see the progression as it whispers, don't fear God, do these bad things, hate, learn to hate, be deceitful, be mischievous, and then you'll stop even doing any good. And in mischief he plots in his bed, takes his stand on a way of no good, evil he does not despise. That's an almost direct photo negative of the Deuteronomical commandments in Deuteronomy, that when you in your bed and when you're walking, contemplate these things and keep the law, keep the Torah in your heart. Yeah. He's saying, actually, instead of meditating on Torah, he's meditating on mischief. And not like Minions mischief, not like funny stuff on TV, but like deceit and malice. And that's what he does. He wakes up thinking about it. He goes to sleep thinking about it. It's just consumed him. So it becomes habitual. Lord, in the heavens, your kindness, and that word is hesed, I'm pretty sure, Lord in the heavens, your kindness, your faithfulness to the skies, your justice like the unending mountains, your judgment, the great abyss, man and beast, the Lord rescues. So we've depicted crime or sin or transgression, however you want, whatever word you want to use there. We've depicted crime as mighty and being able to seduce these people into habitual evil. And these people, in our experience, and that's not from the Psalm, but you get it from the context, they tend to prosper on earth because they're willing to walk over whoever they have to prosper. And so they seem mighty, and especially for the Psalms are often written to people in poor, marginalized positions. So you got nothing. You can't, the peasant in the village can't take on the king, up at the feudal lord or whatever. It just doesn't happen, right? So what he's saying is as frightening as crime might be, guess what? God is bigger. God's kindness is up to the heavens. His faithfulness is as high as the skies. Your justice like an unending mountain, your judgment, the great abyss, man and beast, the Lord rescues. So God is sovereign over all things. So that's why I kind of shifted my analogy when I was using it, my metaphor. It's like a peasant complaining about their feudal lord. Well, the king who's over everything, that's the one who has the true justice. So the peasant has no power over the Lord, but if the peasant goes to the king, right? I'm making all these hand motions. How dear is your kindness, O God, and the sons of men in your wings shadow shelter. They take their fill from the fare of your house, and from your stream of delights you give them drink. For with you is the fountain of life, and in your light we shall see light. That's a beautiful little quartet. I mean, it's almost like Psalm 23. It's like the Lord is my shepherd. It's a very bucolic kind of pastoral thing. And by the way, for with you is the fountain of life, and in your light we shall see light. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah. Well, it's that's one of the verses that's in the great doxology. Yeah. So the great thanksgiving to God. With you is the fountain of life, in your light we shall see light, which we could spend a whole class just talking about. In your light we shall see light. There's Christ's countenance that gives intelligibility to every other thing. It makes it make sense. It gives it a pattern that we're able to see light, the light in the darkness, because of the light of Christ's visage, of his face. Draw down your kindness to those who know you, your justice to the upright. Let no haughty foot overtake me, not the hand of the wicked repel me. There did the doers of mischief fall. They were toppled and could not rise. So there's a little bit of a deliverance there. But notice what's happening here is the first one was, deliver me from the false accusers because I'm too weak to do it. This is, God is more powerful than the wicked and the criminal. He will throw them down into the dust, right? Let me make sure I've got. Oh yeah. So the turning point of this is on the steadfast love, on the chesed. Yeah, I think I got everything on here. It talks about God's faithfulness and his reliability to those that know him, and that his justice vindicates those that rely on him. So that those two kind of twin. And by the way, the Old Testament does not make many comments about the character of God. Sometimes people try to make, it says God's like this, God's like that, God's like, It basically says God is two things. He says he's chesed, he's steadfast love. And what was the other one? I don't think it was justice, but long suffering. So it's long suffering and the loving kindness. So that's interesting. So God is above all other powers. Yep. So we talked about that. Oh, and I already talked about this, but this is where my little note was that reminded me of it, is that God's blessings are seen as concrete sensual rewards. It's food and it's drink and it's warmth and it's comfort and it's protection under the shelter of your wings, the shadow of your wings, which is something to remind ourselves of, because we forget that. We forget that all the time, that God is with us, who can be against us, that God provides for us. So now we have the evildoers prostrate in the dust, and we get to Psalm 37. Now, Psalm 37 is another acrostic. So it does the alphabet, but it uses 2 verses per letter. So it's twice as long as the other acrostics. It's a wisdom psalm or a pastoral psalm. It's a teaching psalm, as it were, to show us. It's kind of like Proverbs. It's basically a psalm that's like Proverbs. And this one is very particularly how to deal with jealousy of a wicked man's, of the wicked's success or prosperity. And it's a very didactic psalm. We'll probably just read kind of through it. It's pretty straightforward. I don't really have a lot of notes to get into, but I will read it. Psalm 37, a psalm of David, for David. Do not be incensed by evildoers. Do not envy those who do wrong. For like grass, they will quickly wither, and like green grass, they will fade. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and keep faith. So don't get jealous of those guys. I know it looks good for them. I know it looks like they're doing it, but at some point, it's all going to go away. It's not permanent. It's not eternal. It's temporal. And that's the theme that kicks in here is this is more about God's eternal providence for us rather than the temporal prosperity that we have here. And it says, trust in the Lord, do good, you'll be fine. Take pleasure in the Lord that he grant you your heart's desire. Direct your way to the Lord. Trust him and he will act. He will bring forth your cause like the light and your justice like high noon. Be still before the Lord and await him. Do not be incensed by him who prospers, by the man who devises schemes. So what's going on? The Lord's going to take care of you. The Lord's going to provide for you. Focus on the Lord. Let go of wrath and forsake rage. Do not be incensed to do evil. For evildoers will be cut off. But those who hope in the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. Right? Eternal versus temporal. And very soon the wicked will be no more. You will look at his place, he'll be gone. And the poor shall inherit the earth and take pleasure from great well-being. The wicked lays plots for the just and gnashes his teeth against him. I've never gnashed my teeth. Right? That's in the Bible. I don't know. I don't like even rubbing my teeth. It makes me all...
It's a cultural thing.
I don't know. Maybe it's just an image, or maybe it's just grinding your teeth. It makes me uncomfortable even thinking about it, like the idea of your teeth grinding against you. But anyway, so I guess bad guys gnash their teeth. Maybe that's why I don't like doing it. The master will laugh at him. See, you just laugh. For he sees that his day will come. A sword have the wicked unsheathed and drawn taut their bows to take down the poor and the needy, to slaughter those in the straight way. Right?
Yeah.
Pretty poetic, they're going to go do violence. Their sword shall come home in their heart, and their bows shall be broken. The weapons that they use are going to be taken back. Better a little for the just than wicked men's great profusion. For the wicked's arms shall be broken, but the Lord sustains the just. So again, I know it looks that way. I know the Lord embraces the fate of the blameless, and their estate shall be forever. They shall not be shamed in an evil time, and in days of famine they shall eat their fill. We're not there yet. For the wicked shall perish, and the foes of the Lord like the meadows green, gone in smoke, gone. The wicked man borrows and will not pay, but the just gives free of charge. For those he blesses inherit the earth, and those he curses are cut off. So again, it's saying, I know it looks like it's a pretty straightforward psalm. By the Lord, a man's strides are made firm, in his way he desires. Though he fall, he will not be flung down, for the Lord sustains his hand. A lad I was, and now I am old, and I have never seen a just man forsaken, and his seed seeking bread. All day long lending free of charge, and his seed for a blessing. Now, those verses are problematic, right? Because I'm pretty sure there's been plenty of just men that have been forsaken and whose children are begging for bread, right? So this is a place where we have to hold this in conversation with Job, because otherwise you start reading this psalm and it's like, oh, well, if you're suffering, you must be a sinner. You did something wrong. Because if God loved you, everything would be great. And Job is the one who addresses that question. But we also have to, at the same time, have this recognition that God is ultimately he who provides for us. There's another really, it's Psalm 39. I love Psalm 39, which you're going to think is really weird once we've gone through it. But it's extraordinarily powerful. It's very honest with the way we feel in our faithlessness. It's interesting to find a faithless prayer in the Psalms, but it's also very liberating, I think, for our own experience of God. So where are we? Turn from evil and do good, abide forever, for the Lord loves justice and will not forsake his faithful. So this isn't talking necessarily about, okay, well, if you suffer, then is there just suffering and unjust suffering? This is talking about God being in charge, his justice prevailing. They are guarded forever. The sea of the wicked is cut off. The just will inherit the earth and abide forever upon it. The just man's mouth utters wisdom, his tongue speaks justice. His God's teaching in his heart, his steps will not stumble. The wicked spies out the just man and seeks to put him to death. The Lord will not forsake him in his hands and will not condemn him when he is judged. Hope for the Lord and keep his way, and he will exalt you to inherit the earth. You will see the wicked cut off. I keep actually getting to the notes that I didn't write at the right time. I have seen an arrogant, wicked man taking root like a flourishing plant. He passes on, and look, he's gone. I seek him, and he is not found. So that summarizes the jealousy right there. I know you've seen wicked, arrogant, wicked men taking root and seeming like they're successful and their life is beginning, but they're going to pass on and they're going to be gone. It's not forever. Watch the blameless, look to the upright, for the man of peace has a future. And transgressors, one and all, are destroyed, the future of the wicked cut off. The rescue of the just is from the Lord, their stronghold in time of distress. And the Lord will help them and free them. He will free them from the wicked and rescue them, for they have sheltered in him. So, like I said, not a ton to that psalm. It's mostly just saying, don't be jealous of the wicked because they seem to be prosper. Keep the long view and know that God is over all things. God is sovereign even when it doesn't look like he is. That's the note I put. Which is a really good reminder for us, especially when we're going through suffering, is that God's in charge. Sure doesn't seem that way, but we have to remind ourselves God is in charge. And that comes up, I think we talked about that in the Psalms before, But Psalm 38. So we're doing good. I got about 10 minutes for this one and 10 minutes for 39. Psalm 38 is the third of the 7 penitential psalms. And that's something that Cassiodorus, I think, I forget exactly who it was, but it said there's 7 penitential psalms. So far we've seen 6 and 32, and now we get to 38. And it's a supplicatory prayer. It's a supplication. It's begging God. But it comes from a very deep sense of shame. And that's why I think it's a very powerful prayer, because even if we pretend not to, we feel this way. Mm-hmm. In the quiet of our room when there's nobody else around, we think, okay, wow, I'm not who I thought I was. What's interesting, it uses this metaphor. Well, maybe not a metaphor, because it could have been a prayer for somebody who was sick. And most of the commentators see this prayer as one who began a prayer that began, whether it was David or somebody else, as a personal prayer that then became a communal liturgical prayer. So this was kind of used in some sort of a ritual at the temple or some kind of service for healing. I have to go back and look, and I wonder if this is in our unction service. If Psalm 38 shows up, I have to check. But it might be, because I hear the psalm all the time. But it likens, so this psalm is based, and it plays off of this Semitic idea that any kind of illness is ultimately caused by sin. So if I am ill, it's because I sinned. Now, it's interesting because that's exactly what Job is arguing against. And it's exactly what these other Psalms are trying to put into context, is this idea that, if you're sick, it's because you're a bad person. And if you were a good person, you wouldn't be sick, right? But what that also means is that sin has a physical expression in our illness. And so what this psalm is doing is looking at it, it's basically saying, Lord, look at the completeness of my physical ailment. I must really be a terrible sinner. And then it goes into asking for deliverance and everything else like that. But we'll jump into it. But keep that in mind, that we're going to go through this long litany of all the different places that this guy's aching and his body's falling apart. It's not so much the guy's doing the whole nursing home, oh, my elbow doesn't work, and yeah, I've got gout, whatever it is, when they're kind of trading their ailments. It's beyond that. It's actually a declaration that I am a sinner through and through, that my sin is so extensive and complete that every part of me is expressing sin through its illness. O Lord, rebuke me not in your anger, nor chasten me in your wrath, for your arrows have sunk into me, and your hand has come down on me. Maybe is that one of that might be one that's one of the morning psalms, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's what I just
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, yeah, that's one of the morning psalms. So we read it every all the time, every Sunday. Lord, do not rebuke me in your fury, nor chasten me in your wrath, for your arrows have come down upon me, and upon me has come down your hand. So I'm already feeling the effects of the sin. It's kind of interesting because one of the commentators got really caught up in how, oh, Christians don't like this psalm because, if you're a sinner, then don't ask me for forgiveness. And, you should be pleading for forgiveness. You shouldn't be saying, why are you bothering me? But it's again, it's a really powerful psalm because it doesn't have a legalistic understanding of sin at all. It has a very ontological, medical sense of sin. It's you don't need to make me feel bad for my sin because I'm already afflicted by my sin. I'm already, the consequence of my action is already made present in my flesh. Not to be too personal, but with all my sugar stuff right now, I'm like borderline right on diabetes. I'm like I'm like trying not to get there, but my body aches. My vision's not as good, and if I don't stop eating sugar, I'm going to go into full-on diabetes. I don't want to stop eating sugar. I like eating sugar. But nobody has to say you shouldn't eat sugar. I'm literally eating myself to death. The consequence is already being made present in my body. I'm already seeing some kind of symptomatic things that shows this is a toxin you're taking into your body. To put that in a spiritual sense, it's the same thing. Nobody has to tell you, your sin, you really shouldn't like your sin. Well, my sin's making me, it has an impact on me. I'm sick, I'm ill, if not in body, at least in emotion and relationship and, psychology and everything else. Sin has consequences. So when it's talking about your arrows have come down upon me, they're saying the consequences of my sin, you've already responded. You've already inflicted me with the consequences of the sin. And here I am suffering. Don't be mad at me anymore. Stop. Right? There's no whole place in my flesh through your rage, and no soundness in my limbs through my offense. For my crimes have welled over my head, my sins, my transgressions. My crimes have welled up over my head like a heavy burden too heavy for me. And the images of drowning. It's of my sins being so great, they're drowning me. And now he's where he gets really physical. My sores make a stench, have festered through my folly. I am twisted, I am all bent. All day long I go about gloomy. For my innards are filled with burning, and there's no whole place in my flesh. I grow numb and am utterly crushed. I roar from my heart's churning. Ooh, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But again, this isn't so much a catalog of afflictions as just the full penetration of sin into my life. Every part of me is collapsing into dust because of my sin. And with that, no, I'm just kidding. Oh, Master, before you is all my desire. My sighs are not hidden from you. So you see me. I don't have to convince you. You see what's going on with me. My heart spins around. My strength forsakes me. And the light of my eyes, too, is gone from me. My friends and companions stand off from my plight. My kinsmen stand far away. They lay snares who seek my life and want my harm. They speak lies, deceit, utter all day long. So here's an important point too about sin. Sin has physical consequences. The somaticizing or somatizing. Basically, your stress can give you physical ailments. There's a lot of other things like that. Sin also, although we would also want to then say it's not always, but sin also can give you illness. A silly thing would be smoking. Okay, is it sinful to smoke? Well, it's self-destructive, so yeah, we call it sinful. But I mean, the consequences are pretty much it's right there. You're going to get sick if you smoke. But they also have social consequences. So sickness, especially in an age of leprosy and any kind of skin affliction. So even I've got a little bit of psoriasis, a little patch of dry skin. You're a leper. Get out of here. So you have no more community. You have no more social connection. So there's there's a physical and a social component to the suffering. But like the deaf, I do not hear, and like the mute whose mouth will not open. So the ailments have gotten to the point where he can't even speak. And I become like a man who does not hear and has no rebuke in his mouth. For in you, O Lord, I have hoped. You will answer, O Master, my God. So it's kind of cool. One of the commentators said they turn their muteness into a spiritual benefit. And I was, And I read, yeah, that's exactly what's going on here, right? I'm deaf. I have no words in my mouth. So I'll just act like I can't hear anybody. They can accuse me all they want. They can try to deceive me, but I'm going to use this opportunity of my ailment to focus only on God and fully on God and reject all this other stuff that's going on. And by the way, one of the first steps to healing in many cases is to surround yourself with healing influences and to separate yourself from destructive influences, whether they're people or habits or whatever else. For in you, O Lord, I have hoped you will answer me, O Master my God. For I thought, lest they rejoice over me when my foot slips vaunt over me. For I am ripe for stumbling, and my pain is before me always. Which, of course, if you're sick and you're infirm. For my crime I shall tell, I dread my offense, and my wanton enemies grow many, my unprovoked foes abound. And those who pay back good with evil thwart me for pursuing good. So there's really not a lot of deliverance. There's not a lot of liberation. He's kind of still sitting in this. But this interesting verse 19, for my crime I will tell, for my sins I will tell. It's kind of pushing towards confession.
Yeah.
You know? Do not forsake me, Lord my God. Do not stay far from me. Hasten to my help, O Master of my rescue. Those two verses are fairly formulaic, and they're almost just tagged onto there. You know, because we don't want to end in this gloomy way, you know, oh, that my foes, they're paying me back good for evil, no matter what I do. They don't, you know, but it's do not forsake me, hasten to my help, O Master of my rescue. So it's recognized. And again, through all of these 35, 36, 37, 38 is this idea of a sense of inadequacy in the face of the prosperity of the wicked or our adversaries or people who are opposed to us. And this kind of clarion call, it's such a cliche, this clear bell ringing to remind us that God is sovereign, that God has ultimate oversight and will correct these things in eternity. But the temporal sense can be disconcerting at times. So let me make sure I got all my notes here. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, it's the completeness of the illness. Oh, and the other thing is, like I said, those two verses seem tacked on. Psalm 38 has 22 verses. A number of psalms we've come across, I've mentioned this before, there's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. It's not an acrostic, but it is a very carefully constructed psalm. And that's one of the things that in particular, one of the commentators always catches, which I really appreciate, because what that means is it was a carefully composed psalm. What I find fascinating about that is, especially, you know, my wounds grow foul and fester because of my foolishness. I'm utterly bowed down, prostrate all day long. I go about mourning. It captures the urgency and the immediacy and the spontaneity of this anguish and this, you know, not quite depression, but just this despair at how ill we are. It's really fascinating that it's so well constructed because it seems almost like a spontaneous eruption of grief. But that's another reason why why one of the commentators thought that this was likely used in some kind of a temple service, a temple ritual for healing, because it's so carefully composed. 22 verses, 2 doublets in each one, and it fits together very nicely. Psalm 39. We will end on Psalm 39. And I'm doing this on purpose, and I apologize to everyone because it's going to make the week kind of hard. But I want you to experience the effect of this psalm. That means you have to come back next week, though, because I don't want to leave you there, because it ends. This is one of 2 psalms in the entire Psalter that ends on despair. There's no resolution, none. It's actually really dark. You know, Psalm 88, I think, is the other one. I'd have to look. And so then the question becomes, who would ever pray such a prayer? Why would somebody write this, and why would it be included in Scripture? But anyway, so Psalm 39 is one I was thinking about earlier. That is a triadic structure. Usually, there's this kind of there's these Hebrew poetry is in 2 lines. So do not forsake me, Lord, my God, do not stay far from me. Hasten to my help, O Master of my rescue. So they're kind of parallel lines that kind of repeat each other, but they intensify. We talked about that a lot.
Yes.
Psalm 39 is triadic in structure. So it's each line goes 3. And what that does is it's no longer evenly balanced. So the actual structure of the poem, which I would have never caught on. I am not a poet guy. I mean, I freely admit I am totally stealing other people's ideas, or at least their insights about this. But you start to notice it once somebody's pointed it out to you. But when you put in a triadic structure, it destroys the balance. And so it becomes a very unstable, tense-filled, it's a tension-filled poetic structure. So even the structure of the psalm is kind of unnerving. It's kind of unsettling. It's a sort of supplication, but it's also kind of a sort of meditation. It's a very strange. It doesn't fit easily into any of the genres. So it's just an odd psalm. It's a very strange psalm, and you'll see why. And I think purposefully because of what it communicates. But again, this is what we call, or what one of the commentators, which I borrowed because I really like it. It's a permission granting psalm. It's God saying through the psalmist, I know you feel this way. Stop trying to hide it from me. Don't be pious. Don't put on a face. Just be you. And I keep going back to something that Dr. Mamalaki said in a lecture one time. He said, God cannot heal false images. You know, we keep trying to bring our best self to God. God isn't fooled. And he can't do much with our best self because that isn't real. He wants us as we are. So here we are. I said, I will guard my ways that I may not sin with my tongue. I will bridle my mouth so long as the wicked are in my presence. So I'm going to go back. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to Robert Alters. So this is going back, right? He says, I'm like a deaf man, do not hear, like a dumb man who does not open his mouth, like a man who does not hear and whose mouth are no rebuke. So verses 13 and 14 from Psalm 38. So this basically 39, you can kind of insert in right there. So this is kind of his prayer when he says, all right, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be like a deaf man. I'm going to be mute. I'm not going to say a thing. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Right? So for Jeduthun, a David psalm, I thought, let me keep my ways from offending with my tongue. Let me keep a muzzle on my mouth as long as the wicked is before me. So there's your triadic structure. Let me keep my ways from offending with my tongue. Let me keep a muzzle on my mouth as long as the wicked is before me. Which doesn't really, see how it unbalances it?
Yeah.
There's these two that are kind of mean the same thing. But then it's like, no, I'm keeping silent because I'm in the presence of the wicked. And I know they're just going to mock me and I'm not going to pay attention. So it changes, it adds tension into it. Because now it's not like, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because, you know, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. But he's actually in the presence of the wicked. He's like, I'm just not going to deal with this. I'm not going to bother with this. I was mute in silence. I kept still, deprived of good. So again, those sound the same. But then the third line, and my pain was grievous. Right? I kept my mouth shut. I kept still. I didn't get good things because I wasn't, you know, arguing with people. And my pain just got worse. My pain was grievous. My heart was hot within me. In my thoughts, a fire burned. I spoke with my tongue. Right? I'm going to be silent. I'm not going to say anything. And then all of a sudden you go this thing. And so I said something, right? And I got to tell you, this psalm, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've said, oh, I'm going to be better today. I'm not going to let my temper get a hold of me. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to say that. And then the very first, it's like the story about the monk who goes in the church and he's been praying and praying. It's hours on the floor and before the icons and making prostrations, everything else. He said, Lord, take my anger from me. Lord, I don't want to be angry anymore. Please help me overcome my anger. Help me overcome my anger. Help me overcome my anger. So he turns, he walks out of the church. He's walking on the trail. And one of the other monks comes by and says something that triggers him and he yells at him. He takes a few more steps. He goes, Lord, I asked you to take away my anger. And God said, well, I just gave you a chance to practice. You know, it takes the effort. But we feel that way all the time. It's like, look, I'm going to resolve to do the right thing. I'm not going to say a word. I'm not going to complain. And then what happens? We just fester inside, you know. We're so resentful. We're so envious or we're so judgmental, whatever it happens to be. And we hold our tongue and we try to be good. And we're going to be nice, pious Christians. And we just until it explodes. Yeah. Right now, usually I explode all over other people. But even in the psalm, there's a lesson, right? Because who does he explode all over? Let's find out. My heart was hot within me and my thoughts of fire burned. I spoke with my tongue. Let me know, O Lord, my end. And what is the measure of my days? I would know how fleeting I am. So he unloads on God. At least he doesn't yell at his adversary. He just unloads on God, but he unloads on God. And the rest of this has the same kind of tonality as the Koheleth, as the teacher in Ecclesiastes. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. It's all dust and ashes. There's nothing worthwhile. Life is despair and despondency and depression. I mean, this is a heavy duty psalm. I also think, almost paradoxically and counterintuitively, this is the perfect psalm to memorize if you're depressed and angry at God. Because this psalm is depressed and angry at God. And then all of a sudden you go, that's in the Bible. Okay, I'm in the Bible. The way I feel, God has dealt with it. God understands. God, that's part of his experience. Let me know, O Lord, my end, and what is the measure of my days. I would know how fleeting I am. Look, mere handspans you made my days, and my lot is as nothing before you. Mere breath is each man standing. We're just the breath that just disappears. Especially in the winter when you breathe out and you little smoke and then it's gone. So that's all we are. I'm telling you. In but shadow a man goes about, mere breath he murmurs. He stores and knows not who will gather. So we're going around getting all this wealth and building it up, and we don't even know who's going to get it because we're going to die and we're not going to get it. So this guy's really like full on depression right now. He's like, I don't care anything. Whatever's going to happen, I'm going to die. It's not going to get better. No one's ever fixing it. I just might as well know when am I going to die. Just tell me when I'm going to die. Yeah. It's like Job. I mean, this reflects some of the arguments Job had. He said, just leave me here to die. Right. But and it's also anticipates later on. But and now what I expect, O Master, my hope is in you. So even in the midst of all this despair, he's like, my hope is in you. But watch what he does with that. My hope is in you. From all of my sins, save me. Make me not the scoundrel scorn. I was mute, my mouth did not open, for it was you who acted. Take away your scourge, from the blow of your hand I perish. In rebuke for crime you chastise a man, melt like moth his treasure, mere breath all humankind. So there's this moment of saying, and now, Lord, for what do I hope, right? What do I expect, O Lord? My hope is in you. That's not the typical psalm response of this return to God and saying, oh, in the midst of all this, I will look to my hope in you. It's sarcastic, right? I was mute. For now, what do I expect, O Master? My hope is in you. It's like, oh, so what should I expect? My hope is in you. What are you going to do? Right? Deliver me from all of my transgressions. Make me not the scorn of the fool. I'm dumb. I didn't open my mouth. It's you who've done it. Right? He says, fine, I'll trust in you. But then there's this moment. Take away from me your scourge. For it was you. Well, let me go back to verse 10. For it was you who acted. Take away from me your scourge. From the blow of your hand I perish. In rebuke for crime you chastise a man. Melt like the moth his treasure. Mere breath all humankind. It's God's fault. That's what the psalm is saying. He's saying, I looked for my hope to you. I asked you to deliver me. I said, don't let my enemies rejoice over me. Don't let me become the mocking of the slanderers. Come and deliver me. But wait a second. It wasn't even then. It was you who acted in my life. You're the one who let me. If you're ultimately over everything, you're the one who gives me health. You're the one who takes it away. You made me ill. My bones that are crushed is because of you. Right? And again, the raw honesty of that, that's how we sometimes, I sometimes feel. I think some people don't quite get to this depth. But it's right there in the psalm. In rebuke for a crime, oh yeah, okay, he did something wrong, but your response is worse. You melted his treasure like a moth, just disappeared. Mere breath, all humankind, right? Surely every man is a mere breath. Why? Because God created it that way. Hear my prayer, O Lord, to my cry hearken, to my tears be not deaf. I love that. Deaf to tears. Yeah. Right? So the sound of my crying. He's saying, here's my prayer. I need you to hear me. Please listen to me. I need you to hear my prayer. Don't be deaf to my cries. Please, please hear me. And then what does he say? For I am a sojourner with you, a new settler like all of my fathers. Look away from me that I may catch my breath before I depart and am not. Or the way that the New Revised Standard, hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace at my tears. For I am your passing guest, a sojourner like all my fathers. Look away from me that I may know gladness before I depart and be no more. So the Semitic idiom for what they translate as no gladness is more like catching my breath. Let me catch my breath. Yeah. So I'm going to take this apart and then we're going to leave here. and if it's too much for you this week, then go read Psalm 40. If you need to resolve it, go read Psalm 40. But I find it remarkable that this psalm, and I really wanted to finish on this because I want us to sit with it for a little while just to see what it can teach us. But again, this is I'm asking a difficult thing. This is not a pleasant thing to sit with. So he says, hear my prayer, O Lord, give ear to my cry. Do not be deaf to my tears. I need you to hear me, Lord, please. For I'm a passing guest, a sojourner like all my fathers. So sojourner and a new settler, or a passing guest, however they want to do those things, a sojourner and settler, those words are typically used together. It's called a heniatus, I think is the word for it. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, a hendiatus. A hendiatus. Sojourner, settler is the Hebrew for a resident alien. And in Deuteronomy, there's a lot of rules about how you treat the resident alien. It's somebody who lives in your land, but they don't have any land rights. So the resident alien. What he does, but a resident alien is somebody who is there who has no rights. So what he does is he splits the two terms and he puts a modifier on one. I'm a new settler or a passing guest, however you want to translate those things. It makes it even more temporal. It makes it like a fleeting breath. I don't even really have any substance in this life. I'm just passing through. I'm just a gypsy who's here for a moment and gone the next. There's no permanence. There's no eternity. It's purely temporal. It really highlights that in a very, very profound way. I am your passing guest, a sojourner like all my fathers. I'm just a guest passing through. I don't matter at all. Look away from me that I may catch my breath before I depart and be no more. Turn your eyes away from me so I can just die. Don't make me sit in this despair and this despondency any longer. Just let me die. And we talk about seeing the glory of God face to face and say, take your face and turn it away from me. It's almost asking to be forsaken. It's asking to be abandoned, but because it's too painful to be in your presence, and I just want to die, and before I can go and be no more, and just the mere breath that fades into the night wind, and it ends there, and that's the end of the song. Just don't even look at me anymore. And Cecilia, and I always think about the story, not to take away from the depth of that ending, but when Cece gets upset, or especially if Kelly's already gone to work and she wakes up and I'm the only one there, and I'll go to hug her and I'll say, well, I'll cuddle you. She's like, no, don't look at me. Like, she doesn't want me to see her suffering. She just wants to be able to go and be sad and get over it, which she does in like 3 minutes. She's a 3-year-old, right? But it's really interesting. She, more than any of my other 3 kids, is very much like, if she's upset or sad or feeling despondent, I guess if a 3-year-old can be despondent, feeling sad, she doesn't want anybody looking at her. She wants to just go hide until she kind of recovers. That impulse, I think, if you expand it up, this despondency, and I've been there. I mean, I've been in the place where I've been like, you know what? I don't want this anymore. It's just not worth it. I don't care if you promise me something better in the future. I don't care if you say it's going to get better. I don't want to get better. That's where suicide comes from. And one of my friends, I think it's probably one of the best quotes I've ever heard about suicide. It said, never choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Despondency is a temporary thing. But in the midst of despondency, you don't want anybody telling you, this too shall pass. That's just what's the word? It's a cliche, but it's another word. It's a platitude. I hate platitudes. Kelly always make fun because I'm like, that's a platitude. It's like, but it might be true. But I'm like, it's a platitude, you know. But just, oh, this too shall pass. Well, okay, it will, but that doesn't help somebody. This psalm, it's like, I get you. Yeah. I right there, just leave me alone, let me die. That's what's best for everybody. Just leave me alone and let me die. There's a psalm in the Psalter, in the book of Psalms, there's a psalm that asks God to leave us alone so we can just die. That's amazing that it has that expanse of emotional authenticity, that it grasps the human condition so deeply that we recognize sometimes we experience despair, sometimes despondency, sometimes depression, and that's what it looks like. And to resolve it, you have to come back next week. But Psalm 40 begins to resolve it. And of course, the answer is throughout all the scripture. But how powerful, I mean, maybe for me, maybe it's just because I've struggled with depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, but just how powerful it is to me to know that God gets it. You know, you think, okay, well, God gets all this stuff, but how can you really know what it feels like to be a totally broken, you know, right there. You get it. I hope that is valuable to you all for your reflections. I will babble for a second to see if anybody has any questions. I don't see anything. I see Mary Jo Richusa. Hello, Maria. Let me see, 3 viewers. Maybe people watch it later on. I know a couple people that normally watch aren't able to watch tonight. That's about it. I'm not seeing any questions pop up. So I guess we will close with prayer. And again, as always, thank you all for joining us online. Whether it's live or whether it's later on when you play back the archive. But it is a great blessing to me and to the parish that we're engaging Scripture in this way. And I'm going to close with this, but I was just talking to Andrew earlier. I got an advisor for my thesis project, so I'm ahead of the ball curve, which is really great. But one of the reasons I asked for her and received her, which is really cool, I didn't say this, but she looks at the world through Scripture. She has a scriptural imagination. Everything she sees in the world she sees really the Psalms. That's what she studies a lot. And that's what I want for us. I want us to begin to be able to interpret and experience and understand the world through Scripture, because that gives us a true understanding. It gives us the clearest clarity of perception so that we really see things as they are. So that's my hope. And I know that as some of us do that in the parish, it will grow and it will develop and it will build more deeply into the parish. So thank you all for being part of that. And with that, still no questions have popped up. So we will close with a prayer. And I went over by 10 minutes. Oh, I thought I only went over by 5. That's what happens when I babble at the end. Oh. O holy apostle and evangelist Luke, make intercession to our merciful God, that he grant our souls remission of offenses. Lord Jesus Christ, your God, please watch over this, your servant, grant him safe passage in his home. Watch over him, guide him, and protect him. Lord, please watch over all those who participate in this Bible study through the internet. Thank you for their prayers. And Lord, help us to come before you honestly with the fullness of the spectrum of our human emotion and feeling, for our failings and for those things which make us strong. But help us to come before you in trust, recognizing that you are intimately concerned with our well-being, with our peace, with our shalom, with the fullness of our experience. And help us, O Lord, to trust in you and to trust in your justice and to know that you are sovereign over all things, even when it's not apparent to us. For your holy name, forever in the ages of ages. Amen. 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 Oh, thank you, everybody. And I will bid you adieu. Good night, everyone. Adieu. Why is it French? It's not French. I'll bid you adieu. All right. See you. Good night, everyone. God bless you.